autoridades presentes, señoras y señores, muy buenos días. Les damos la más cordial bienvenida al punto de encuentro Políticas, Migratorias, Éxitos y Desafíos desde la Perspectiva Canadiense, organizado por el Centro de Estudios Internacionales de la Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile, en conjunto con la Embajada de Canadá en Chile. Saludamos muy cordialmente a todas las autoridades presentes, a nuestro expositor invitado y a todo el público que nos acompaña. Extendemos un especial saludo al embajador de Canadá en Chile, señor Marcel Lebleu, quien a continuación dirigirá unas palabras de bienvenida.
Bueno, gracias.
Buenos días a todos, señores organizadores, autoridades, señoras. Bueno, en primer lugar, quisiera agradecer su presencia aquí y especialmente la presencia de Harald Bauder, que viajó desde Canadá para compartir su conocimiento y priorizar sobre el tema de migración. Ustedes saben que este tema de migración hoy día es un tema muy de actualidad acá en Chile. Según el informe de la ONU, dicen que Chile es el país donde ha crecido más el número de inmigrantes en los últimos 20 años. Y Canadá también es un tema de actualidad, pero por otro motivo. Ya hace 20 años que Canadá tiene una meta muy ambiciosa de migración. Cada año Canadá acoge más o menos 300.000 inmigrantes. Es decir, esto es una meta como objetivo de Estado en más o menos 1% de la población. Hoy 20% de los canadienses han nacido afuera de Canadá. Y eso no está en la nota, pero el primer ministro, para todo manejar todo este tema de inmigración, tenemos un ministro de inmigración, hasta el ministro de inmigración canadiense es refugiado somalí, ahora canadiense, pero yo creo que eso muestra muy bien dónde vamos con eso. Este año vamos a celebrar, Canadá es un país muy joven, vamos a celebrar 150 años. 150 años. Mucho más joven que Chile. Pero, ¿qué tenemos para decir después de 150 años? Tenemos un país bilingüe, diverso. Yo creo que todo el tema de multiculturalismo hace parte de la construcción de Canadá. La verdad es que eso está inscrito en la Carta Magna de Canadá, la Carta de Derechos y Libertades. Yo presumo que ustedes a través de su proceso constituyente van a encontrar una fórmula similar si eso lleva a cabo. Nosotros, para el gobierno canadiense, la democracia, la gobernanza inclusiva y la responsabilidad del pluralismo pacífico, el respeto por la diversidad, son temas de prioridades. Y yo quiero dar el ejemplo de nuestro primer ministro que habló durante el Día Internacional de los Refugiados sobre el tema de los refugiados. Y así creo que son palabras muy impactantes, al menos para mí, que dice: somos una nación de millones de inmigrantes y refugiados de cientos de culturas, lenguas y regiones que están unidos por una creencia inquebrantable. Somos más fuertes, no a pesar de nuestras diferencias, sino como consecuencia de ellas. Y eso es un poco el chip, como se dice. De hecho, nosotros, como mencionaba, damos la bienvenida a 300.000 inmigrantes y hoy el doctor Bauder nos va a decir cuál es el modelo, cuál es la experiencia. No hay un modelo perfecto, no estamos aquí para decir que el modelo canadiense es el mejor. We have a model, it worked for us, estamos aquí para compartir. Pero también hay mensaje y hay liderazgo político. Y eso es muy importante para entender este tema, porque todo este modelo se debe construir a través de una visión del mundo político, pero también de la sociedad civil. Voy a dar el ejemplo de lo que este gobierno hizo justo después de su elección. El primer ministro se anunció que íbamos a acoger 25.000 refugiados seríamos en 4 meses. Lo hicimos, pero en 5 meses. Pero yo creo que ahí hay una voluntad política muy importante, hay un mensaje muy claro. Y este mensaje no es solo palabras, también en los gestos. El primer ministro salió, estaba en el aeropuerto cuando el primer avión llegó para dar la bienvenida a los chicos. Y terminamos con 40.000 refugiados acogidos. Y eso no es una respuesta solo del gobierno, sino de toda la sociedad. Tenemos un sistema de patrocinamiento privado. Es decir, las comunidades ponen a disposición de la gente un departamento, ropas. Y, ¿sabe? Yo pensaba al principio, eso es una reflexión personal, que eso era una política un poco arriesgosa, era una apuesta muy fuerte, pero la recepción fue increíble. Y hoy la queja de la gente a los ministros no es decir que hay demasiados refugiados, es ¿dónde está mi refugiado? Yo quiero porque yo tengo un departamento listo, tenemos la comunidad lista, pero ¿dónde está mi refugiado? Y eso yo creo que ha sido una experiencia fantástica. Es un consenso, no digo que todo el mundo está 100% de acuerdo, pero en general yo creo que este modelo funciona y existe en la construcción del modelo canadiense esta voluntad y esta apertura. Agrego, para terminar, nos llegamos a ver una contradicción entre la libertad individual y la identidad colectiva. De hecho, creemos que ambos prosperan y se refuerzan mutuamente. Creo que la compasión, la inclusión, la confianza y nuestra convicción de que la diversidad no es un desafío, sino una oportunidad, hace de Canadá el país que es hoy, un país, una nación fuerte y libre, donde la gente quiere ir a vivir. Así que, gracias por estar con nosotros. I spoke already enough, taking your valuable time, but thank you for being with us. Yo entiendo que la presentación va a ser en inglés, pero después con una traducción consecutiva. So, thank you for taking the time of your busy schedule para aprovechar lo que era el último día de verano. Así que, thank you.
Muchas gracias, embajador, por sus palabras. A continuación, dejo con ustedes al director del Centro de Estudios Internacionales de la Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile, quien nos entregará unas palabras introductorias del tema que hoy nos convoca, para luego dar paso a la conferencia central de este punto de encuentro. Posterior a la conferencia, habrá un espacio para preguntas del público.
Muy buenos días. En primer lugar, aún quedan algunos asientos, creo, aquí. Bueno, ya se está llenando, pero las personas que vemos atrás hay 2 asientos aquí en la parte delantera. Agradecer el trabajo que hemos hecho en conjunto con la Embajada de Canadá, que ha permitido traer al doctor Carl Bowder, a quien más adelante voy a introducir con mayor detalle, y darle la bienvenida a ustedes, a las autoridades, a representantes del cuerpo diplomático, académicos, audiencia en general, y comentarles que la misión del Centro de Estudios Internacionales es fundamentalmente contribuir al vínculo de la universidad con la sociedad. En este caso, a través del estudio interdisciplinario de temas internacionales. En el mes de enero comenzamos teniendo un seminario internacional sobre el posible nuevo orden económico y político mundial, y dentro de los temas que creemos fundamentales en el último tiempo está el fenómeno migratorio. La elección de Estados Unidos, por ejemplo, señalaba que dentro de las principales 3 preocupaciones, una de ellas era el fenómeno migratorio. En el debate presidencial ayer en Francia hubo muchos pasajes donde se discutió cómo abordar este mismo tema. Y en Chile, si miramos las cifras, entendiendo que este es un proceso relevante a nivel mundial y también en nuestro país, según la encuesta que hace en el año 2006, alrededor de 150.000 personas correspondían a la población inmigrante, casi el 1% de la población chilena. Al año 2015, en la última encuesta, ya llegaba el stock a 465.000 aproximadamente, casi el 3% de la población, solo superado en Latinoamérica por Costa Rica, Argentina, Panamá y Venezuela. Como muestra de eso, además, este año el gobierno ha anunciado la presentación de un proyecto de ley inicialmente para el mes de abril. Y creemos que como Universidad Católica es muy importante tener estos espacios de diálogo, de reflexión, más allá de la contingencia, sobre este tipo de temas. Por mencionar otro ejemplo, la Facultad de Derecho de esta universidad, junto con la Clínica Jurídica y la Embajada de Estados Unidos, tiene un proyecto a largo plazo donde se hace asistencia jurídica gratuita a familias de inmigrantes. Por lo tanto, es un tema prioritario para esta casa de estudio. Y en ese contexto está Canadá, que ha sido capaz de enfrentar el fenómeno migratorio con una política pública balanceada. Estamos hablando de un país que más del 20%, el 22% es población inmigrante, aunque el profesor nos va a explicar la manera que hay distintas maneras de medirlo, pero la medición de la Organización de Naciones Unidas habla de el cuarto país dentro de los países desarrollados con mayor población inmigrante. Y nos interesa conocer la experiencia canadiense, y nos interesa también conocerla para ver qué lecciones podemos extraer para el caso chileno. Y es por eso que tenemos hoy día, como mencioné anteriormente, al doctor Harald Bauder, quien es profesor de Geografía y director del programa de graduados en estudios de inmigración y asentamientos de la Universidad Ryerson. Desde 2011 al 2015 trabajó como director académico fundador del Centro Ryerson para la Inmigración y los Asentamientos. Es autor y editor de 8 libros y de más de 70 artículos publicados en revistas especializadas sobre el tema de integración de los inmigrantes. Su trabajo ha sido frecuentemente reproducido en distintos medios de comunicación como Global Mail, The Toronto Star, Huffington Post, Diet y Open Democracy. Como muestra de su trabajo, en 2015 recibió el premio de la institución Konrad Adenauer Research Award, otorgado conjuntamente por la Royal Society of Canada y la Fundación Alexander for Humboldt Foundation. Es decir, tenemos aquí un especialista en la materia. Quiero volver a agradecer a la Embajada de Canadá que ha hecho posible que podamos llevar a cabo conjuntamente esta actividad. Y la idea es que el profesor Bauder va a presentar por alrededor de 40-45 minutos, va a hacer una explicación detallada y luego vamos a dar pie a las preguntas y comentarios del público. Vamos a tener un traductor en caso que así ustedes lo deseen para el momento de las preguntas y comentarios. Muchas gracias. Dejo entonces con usted al profesor. Professor, thank you for coming to Chile, and we are very delighted to learn more about this pressing issue in Chile and the experience that Canada has had during the last decades on immigration. Thank you, Professor.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, and I'd like to begin with thanking the Canadian Embassy and the Universidad Católica the embassy for bringing me here and the university for hosting this event. It's a wonderful opportunity, not only because I left Canada shortly after a snowstorm, and it's much more pleasant here, I can tell you, but I'm also very keen to learn about immigration and settlement in Chile, and of course also present the Canadian experience, and hope to have after the presentation a constructive dialogue about these issues. So let me provide you with an overview of what I'm going to do in the next 40 minutes or so. I want to present to you the Canadian experience related to the immigration system and immigration settlement, to use that term, and provide you an overview of what has worked really well in Canada, and then also some of the challenges that still exist and where the Canadian government and Canadian civil society is continuously working on improving. So first I'm going to give you a bit of a background of immigration to Canada and settlement in Canada, how it works, and then I want to talk about newcomer settlement. Settlement is a term that refers to after arrival. Immigration is not only about selecting immigrants, but also making sure that they become part of the Canadian fabric, of the social and societal fabric. And there are various aspects that I want to touch on: work, policies, the settlement sector, family and community, and also citizenship. And then I want to end by talking about some of the challenges, and there are lots of challenges, but I'm selecting a few of those just to give you an idea of where there's more work that we need to address. And then after that, as I said, I hope there will be a constructive dialogue about the Canadian experience and the situation in Chile right now. So, this graphic here gives you a basic overview of immigration levels and the history of immigration to Canada. There are two graphics, and I don't know how well you can see. The time scale horizontally starts in 1860. You can probably see those numbers in the back. Up until just a few years ago. I think the last number that I have here is 2014 or 15. And the top graphic shows the annual intake in total numbers. And the graphic starts with 0 and ends up on the top with 500,000. And what you can see here in this top graphic is that until the 1990s, Canada had really a tap-on, tap-off approach towards immigration. When the business cycle, and this is closely aligned with the business cycle, when the economy was doing well and the Canadian economy required labor, Canada said we need more immigrants, and the tap was opened. When there was war, or when the economy was not doing well, immigration levels were reduced, and that's showing up in these fluctuations very nicely. But then in the 1990s, there was a policy change, and the idea was to attract roughly around 1% of the population annually in immigrants, and not only to service immediate labor market needs, but more also having an objective of continuous contribution, economic contribution, social and civic contribution that immigrants can make to Canadian society. In the bottom graphic, you just see the annual intake of immigrants in percentage terms. And you see that, again, these fluctuations, and then towards the end, in the 1990s, actually started a little bit earlier in the 1970s, these fluctuations weren't that dramatic, but then since the 90s it was just under 1%. So the targets were never really met in terms of the 1%. It was always a little bit below that, but that was the idea, to have a continuous intake of a quite significant number of immigrants annually. Newcomers in Canada are admitted under different immigration classes. And this is again a time scale horizontally. And then the different classes. The largest class is the economic class. So these are immigrants selected for economic reasons. In 2015, that's the largest class. In 2015, that class was made up of 170,000, or roughly 62% of all immigrants that came to Canada. The second largest class is the family class. Those were in 2015 just over 65,000, or almost 25% of all immigrants that came annually to Canada. And then refugees, roughly in 2015, 32,000, or between 11 and 12%. And the rationale here was to have a non-discriminatory system or an immigration system that does not discriminate based on origin or racial characteristics. So in the economic class, the selection criteria was human capital, the number of or the kind of schooling that one has, education, work experience, and so forth. That was measured, for example, in the point system, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. And you can sum it up as human capital was the selection criteria independent of origin or racial characteristics. The family class, if you want to conceptualize the family class as attracting people with social capital, so connections to Canada, and family connections in particular, and then refugees who are in need, so the criteria would be need-based, especially in need of protection, of course. So we can have a closer look to give you an overview over the complexity of the system. Here again, in each of the columns are there's the economic class, the family class, and the refugee class, and under this classes are various different programs. So in the economic class, there's a point system, the skilled workers program. There's the business class program, which is very small at the moment. There's a very innovative program here, I think. It's called the PNP, the Provincial Nominee Program. And the idea is that provinces, so the regional governments, are giving the authority to select immigrants in conjunction with the federal government. So provinces can target the kind of immigrants and the needs that they have in the labor market or other needs, and then select immigrants, and then send that file to the federal government, and they issue immigration papers. And then the Canadian experience class, this is for people who are already in Canada, have experience in the Canadian labor market mostly, that are then also presented with the opportunity to become permanent residents. There is the family class, and eligible here are spouses and partners and children, as well as parents and grandparents. And also there's a super visa that enables family members multiple entries to Canada for up to 10 years, for up to 2 years in each time that they come. And then there are refugees. There are again different programs. A government-assisted program where the government picks up the tab, pays the bill. The privately sponsored program where private organizations, civic society institutions are providing the funding, and then a blended visa office referred program where both of these sectors collaborate with each other. And the various programs are continuously readjusted. So this is a moving target. There's not a single kind of Canadian point system. The government continuously changes the parameters. And with all the other programs as well. So you can imagine it's very hard to keep track of all these programs. And even people that I hear from people who work in government on this file have difficulties keeping track with all the various provincial nominee programs and all the changing regulations. And the readjustment is based based on very different kind of interests. There's the government agenda that, for example, change the point system. There are changing global circumstances, such as the crisis, the refugee crisis related to the civil war in Syria. There are federal, provincial relationships that are important, that plays a role in the provincial nominee programs. There are labor market and economic considerations. How is the labor market going to do in 5 to 10 years? A nation-building agenda that plays a role, and financial considerations such as the super visa, for example. But what I think is important here to realize is that Canada is proactive in the way it selects immigrants. And I think this is one of the key points. It's not passively waiting for people to arrive, but it takes a proactive approach and continuously read things and tries to improve on what kind of immigrants do we need, what kind of immigrants do we want, and how do we change the system to meet Canadian needs. Important in all this, I think, is the way that immigration debate is framed in Canada. You can also call it maybe a national attitude towards newcomers. And what is important here is the Canadian, I call it the Canadian national imagination, that Canada, and I've demonstrated that in my own research, how the Canadian public and public debate sees Canada as a country of immigrants. That immigration is so firmly anchored in the Canadian national imagination that you cannot think of Canada without immigration. And you hear this whenever policymakers, civic leaders talk about Canada, that it was built by immigrants, and of course, immigration is a big part of Canada. That has disadvantages, I think. Indigenous issues are not part of this immigration debate, but we also have the new Minister of Immigration who has said that, or in his mandate letter, one of the points is to establish relations between immigration and indigenous issues and make this link. Canada, for example, is often considered the inventor of multiculturalism, so an appreciation of diversity and the ability to maintain a cultural identity. And multiculturalism has also different kinds of aspects or dimensions. First, it's official policy. Canada has an official Multiculturalism Act, which allows citizens to practice their religion and keep their identities and emphasizes respect between different ethnicities. But it's also a kind of attitude, a public attitude and a philosophy. And of course, the third aspect is that it's a fact. Canada, I live in Toronto, and in Toronto now about half of the population is foreign-born. And the diversity and migration background of a lot of people in Canada, the Canadian population, is just a reality. For example, Toronto's motto is diversity, our strength. So in the very way that a city, Canada's largest city, is presenting itself to the outside, is that it emphasizes its diversity. There's also a great deal of civic engagement. Canada has a volunteering tradition, and that applies to both Canadians, or people born in Canada, as well as immigrants. It comes out, for example, when private families and private individuals and institutions sponsor refugees. And then here in this image here, this is the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in December 2015 welcoming the first Canadian refugees, and he said, and this is a quote, "You are home, welcome home." So refugees in this context, they're seen as future citizens. They're not refugees that we have to take because there's a crisis and they don't really want to be here and we don't want them, but we have to because it's our international obligation. I think it's a very different attitude that immigrants and refugees are seen as future citizens. They're part of us and they will become part of us. They will become part of the Canadian fabric. So these are all the positive aspects. I do not want to give you the impression that all is well in Canada. There is a counter-narrative too. And that is, it has a history, too far. Canada has a history of labor exploitation. For example, the Canadian railway network was built by Chinese laborers who were not given the same kind of privileges as other immigrants. It has a history of racial exclusion. Some of my colleagues would argue that some of this is still part of the Canadian settlement experience, but I think it has been identified as a problem and we're working on it. But when it becomes problematic, I think, the Canadian system is the increase of temporary foreign workers that come under temporary foreign workers program to Canada. And in this graphic here, you see to the left, first the levels of permanent residents. So those are regular immigrants, and they are shown in the dark bars. So that's the 1% intake. That's fairly stable. But then you see the temporary foreign workers and temporary temporary immigrants, or temporary migrants, I have to say, that come to Canada, that's the red bars, and they're increasing every year. So we have an increase, almost an extra increase of temporary migrants to Canada. And that is problematic because often they don't have the same rights, or they can't claim in practical terms the same rights as permanent immigrants or Canadian citizens. You see again different kinds of programs on the right side in this table. There's a temporary foreign workers program, international mobility program, other work permit holders. So international students are part of this too. And the number is quite high, more than 700,000. But those are not all new entries. I understand that's the number that of non-permanent residents that are present in Canada. And then below here you see the number of temporary foreign workers who become permanent residents, so who make the transition from the temporary status towards a permanent status. And that number, well, it's significant, 8,000 and 6,000, so together we're talking about 15,000 or so, but compare that to the size of the temporary migrant population, it's quite small. On the other hand, and again, this has been identified as a problem by the current government, and I understand, I was just meeting with government officials a few days ago in Montreal. I understand this has been identified as a problem, and there's also an initiative to increase the number of people who are making this transition towards permanent residency status. And statistics indicate that this population that's making that transition is actually doing quite well in the labor market. So this is so much, it was background about the immigration system. How do people come to Canada? But once they arrive, settlement, of course, is also important. Settlement and integration. What does it take for immigrants to become a part of the societal fabric? And there are various institutions that intersect. There's the labor market, there are government policies, the settlement sector, family and community, and citizenship. And I want to touch on each of these aspects and how they interact. And I should emphasize that these services, a lot of these services and these aspects, they apply to refugees and immigrants. But refugees receive additional assistance in terms of accommodation, clothing, food, finding employment, and so forth. So let's move to the first aspect here, labor market, the labor market. And there are various factors that are critical for successful integration into the labor market. The first one is human capital. And of course, human capital is one of the selection criteria of in the point system. But not everyone is selected by human capital endowments. And I will show you a graphic later on that indicates that people who are selected based on their skills and their education and experience, they are doing quite well in terms of their incomes. But other people who are not selected by these criteria are having a harder time. Of course, it's one thing to have human capital, again referring to education obtained outside of Canada, and skills obtained outside of Canada, if it's not recognized, if these foreign credentials are not recognized in Canada. So that has been identified as a problem, that foreign degrees and diplomas are not recognized by Canadian employers. They say, well, a diploma from Bangladesh, I don't really know how to interpret that. But again, it has been identified as a problem, and provincial governments in particular are proactive in trying to get these certificates recognized in Canada. And then the Canadian government has also made an effort for immigrants before they arrive to educate themselves how they can get this recognition in the Canadian labor market. A lot of employers, we found, demand Canadian experience from immigrants. And Canadian experience refers to Canadian work experience, and that's a catch-22. you cannot gain Canadian experience unless you're in the labor market, and you don't find a job, so you can't enter the labor market until you have Canadian experience. So it has been a conundrum and a problem. How do you get or equip immigrants with Canadian experience? There are certain rules of the labor market, just the way that employers find workers. In Canada, networks tend to be very important. In the places of origin of the immigrants, often it's more of a formalized kind of network, a formalized procedure. But also things like interviewing skills. How do you do small talk at the water cooler? These are all kind of things that some immigrants need to learn, and that employers maybe not specifically look for, but in an interview, if you don't know how to perform a handshake, that raises suspicion. Language is of course critical for economic performance, English and French, but also professional linguistic competency, so that if you're an engineer, that you actually know what the terms, the professional language that you need to apply in the labor market. And then there are institutional contexts and policies, commitments to diversity, for example, in the workplace, and employment equity legislation. And then we hear, or I read studies that have found that there's still employment discrimination, often based on last name, accents, so that where employers assume that because a person has an accent, there's a skill deficiency, but of course it's not like that. But there's still work to be done to mitigate some of these effects and maybe educate some of the employers as well. I also want to draw attention to the policies of settlement and integration. There's an interesting research tool in which I participated to collecting information a few years ago as well. It's called the Migrant Integration Policy Index, or MIPEX, which compares immigration policies, so the policies, not the outcomes of the policies, but they look at the policies, in 38 countries across more than 150 indicators. And it reveals, and there's a website that you can go to, and it has the various countries that are participating, and you can compare how Canada does to the other countries along various indicators and aspects. And Canada's strengths could be identified here in terms of labor market mobility, for example, that permanent residents and citizens have equal access to the labor market, and there's anti-discrimination policies in place, for example, that the law protects migrants from discrimination based on ethnicity, origin, religion, and nationality. But there are also weaknesses. One of the weaknesses, for example, is political participation, that non-citizens, for example, do not have the right to vote in municipal elections, and in some of the countries of comparison, that is the case. In terms of settlement and the integration experience, I think one of Canada's greatest strengths is to have a settlement sector. So an entire sector of settlement institutions that help newcomers settle. And there are these various factors, institutions, they work very closely together with each other. So it's not that they go off by themselves and do their individual kind of programs, but they coordinate their efforts with each other. And the first component of the settlement sector is the federal government. It has a very strong, relatively powerful federal ministry responsible for immigration and refugees and citizens. But then there are also ministries such as the Ministry for Employment, Workforce and Labor, and Canadian Heritage that has an interest in immigrants' settlement and integration. There are provincial governments that play a role. Provincial governments have been very proactive in foreign credential recognition, because education and labor market issues in Canada are provincial responsibilities. So provincial governments have identified the needs for immigrants to have their foreign credentials recognized, end up being proactively pursuing solving this problem. For example, provincial governments have funded bridging programs that help immigrants to bridge from with the experience and the skills that they have, moving into the labor market and having educational programs. My own university, Ryerson University, for example, offers various programs for immigrants so that they can upgrade their skills, learn the language that is important in the Canadian labor market. There are municipalities that play a major role. Of course, at the local level, this is where integration and settlement happens. This is where you send your children to school. This is where you go shopping. This is where you find employment. This is where you go to a hospital. So municipalities have been very active in housing, education, health, shelter, transportation, and so forth. And then there are community partners, and this is a very important component. It consists of, this element here consists of NGOs, non-governmental organizations. There are many settlement service provider organizations that offer a wide range of settlement services, for example, language training, skills training, they help with job search, and so on. There are also ethnicity-based organizations, such as the Chinese Canadian Society or the Polish Canadian Society, that focus on particular ethnic groups that are involved in this. There are issue-based organizations, for example, the Canadian Race Relations Foundation, that has an interest in fighting, or a mission to fight discrimination in Canada. And then there are universal organizations. I don't know whether you have the YMCA in Chile. Yes? So these are organizations that service the population as a whole, often vulnerable populations as a whole. But a large part of this vulnerable population happens to be immigrants and refugees, so they develop special programs to provide assistance, settlement assistance to this population. Another component, faith-based institutions are very important. So mosques, temples, churches, they provide a wide range of services, not only formal kind of services, but also emotional support, access to a community, access to networking. And when we talk about networking, there are different kinds of networks that are important. Some of them can be important for emotional support, so having very close ties to to individuals and smaller groups. But then also the weak ties, they're called in academic lingo, the weak ties, which is within a larger community. A person that you know is also a member of the community. You might not know that person very well, but it might just be the connection that enables you to connect to an employer, and you might find a job through that. And faith-based communities can provide both of these, the weak ties, or the strong connections, and the weaker kind of connections. And then there are employers that are very important, and where they increasingly come in is, well, they play always an important role. In places like Toronto, the large cities, cosmopolitan cities, I think they're quite open and they realize that diversity is a strength. But they become important in the settlement process in smaller communities where settlement services, because the number of immigrants are not that significant, the services might not be provided by the NGOs, they might not even have a presence. So it's then often up to the employers to provide services. Immediate kind of need, finding housing, maybe even providing housing, and so forth. And provincial nominee programs have been very active. They have attracted significant number of immigrants to places like to provinces like Saskatchewan, which are not the main traditional immigrant gateway centers. In these places, employers play a quite significant role in helping immigrants settle, become part of the community, and be successful in the labor market. Another component here, family and community. There's the extended family, and we're just finishing up at Ryerson a research project where we're finding how important the extended family is, and how there's maybe a different kind of definition that we need to apply in the future of family, that the way that the Canadian immigration system identifies family or defines family is the next of kin. So there's a nuclear kind of family. There's the immigrant, and then the children, and maybe the grandparents, and then they draw a boundary around that unit, and that's a family. But we're finding that the extended family is actually very important. That a person who can make a difference is a distant uncle, or somebody who would be a cousin over 5 corners, that is not immediately part of the nuclear family, but it's still family in the wider sense, but can be quite important in the settlement process and helping with the positive settlement experience. And family networks help with accessing employment, housing, financial assistance, mental health, which is increasingly important, or on the radar of academics, of researchers, but also policymakers, and emotional support. There's also the ethnic community that provides institutions and services, including in areas of culturally appropriate food, say, clothing, recreation, education, faith, health, and so forth. And then there's civic society, and I already mentioned Canadians tend to be an engaged bunch. They're engaged citizens, and one example here would be Lifeline Syria, which is shown, no, I'm on the wrong slide here, which is shown here in this is the website, this image. It's a civic society initiative where civic leaders came together and have decided to create a network and an institution to help groups of 5 people privately sponsor refugees from Syria to settle in Canada. And 5 people would come together, and they would sponsor 1 refugee and would be responsible for 1 year to provide financial assistance. And each of the 5 members would be asked to pay around $5,000 to help. But then it goes beyond that. The families will, or these 5 individuals will come together and look for housing. Once they have something identified, they need to find furniture, and it becomes a big collective kind of exercise to help this refugee family. They need to find employment. They need to enable the family to settle, open bank accounts, and do show them and teach them how to shop in Canada, how everything works. So it's a big enterprise, but a lot of people are up to the task and are volunteering their time and providing financial assistance. So I should clarify that the federal ministry has recently closed the applications from Syria, so it's still going on, Lifeline Syria, but new applications are not accepted anymore because Canada has already taken on roughly 40,000 immigrants, not families, but individuals from Syria. And the final component here is citizenship. I mentioned immigrants that are selected to Canada are always considered future Canadians. And then it's just a natural, logical, and intended step that once immigrants come to Canada, that they also become citizens and assume citizenship. To be eligible, a permanent resident, so an immigrant must be 18 years of age, must be present in Canada 4 years out of 6, know English or French, then pass a citizenship test, and attend a citizenship ceremony, and also pay a fee. And that fee has been problematic. It was relatively low, and when it was low, the uptake of citizenship annually was around 200,000. And with the numbers of immigrants, around 250,000, 260, 70,000, depending, fluctuating on the year, annually a little bit. 200,000, an annual uptake of citizenship of 200,000 is quite significant. Recently, the fee for citizenship has increased, and the total amount now that's required is $630, if I'm informed correctly. And that has had an impact on the uptake of citizenship. It doesn't seem much, $630, but with some immigrant families it seems to be quite significant, and it's just high enough that a lot of immigrants now are saying, well, I don't really need that Canadian citizenship. As permanent resident, I have almost all the same rights as a Canadian. I cannot vote, but other than that, I might not be able to leave for more than 2 years, leave the country, but other than that, I don't really have any disadvantage from not having citizenship. So it appears that the citizenship fee and the increase of the fee has had a significant impact on the uptake of citizenship. Okay, I want to still have a few minutes, right? Just to talk some of the challenges. And I'm just touching on 3 because I think they'll make nice cases, and they are interesting cases. The first challenge is that there are variable rates of labor market success. I talked about the point system, and the graphic here is a little bit difficult to interpret, especially if you can't see the numbers because they're too small. So I'll carry you through it. On the left here, you see various graphics, and the time scale horizontally. I'm just gonna. Can you still hear me if I stand up? Okay. So these are incomes, and I can't read it myself. 10,000 to 100,000. This is the Canadian average. The Canadian average income over time, starting from I think the 1980s sometime until more recently 2010 or something like that. And what you see here is these are different cohorts of immigrants and how their incomes develop over time. So here you have a cohort that came in 1983 or so. You notice that upon arrival, this cohort, and I should say those are the people selected by the skilled workers program. So those are the people who went to the point system, filled out the form, their human capital was measured, and they then were permitted to come to Canada. Upon arrival, their incomes were already above the Canadian average, and then continued over the years to increase. Okay? Then the more recent cohorts, they started out with average incomes, those people who were selected by the point system, just below the average, the Canadian average, but then after a year they caught up and then they exceed the Canadian average. And it continues like that, and even though upon arrival, so on in the year and when they arrive, their incomes are a little bit lower, after 1 year they catch up. So the conclusion here is that the skilled workers program, the point system, is doing quite well in selecting the immigrants that are successful in the labor market. But have the same look at the same graphic for their spouses and dependents. Dependents referring to children. So those are not the individuals that were assessed by their human capital through the point system, but they came because their spouses or their parents were assessed by the point system. And they're having, well, a bit of a harder time. They have sharp increases in terms of their incomes over the years, but they're not doing as well as the people who were measured by the point system. Compare that to the refugees, which is this graphic here. You see that upon arrival, their incomes are much lower, and then their increase, yes, they make more over the years, but they will never, most of them, never reach on average the Canadian average. So, on the one hand, you can say that the point system works quite well. It achieves what it wants to achieve and is supposed to achieve. But when other criteria are applied for immigrant selection, such as the family class, refugee class, then labor market integration is much more challenging. Another challenge, I'm a geographer, so I can't have a presentation without maps. So here are your two maps. This shows the Toronto context. This is the city of Toronto. Lake Ontario would be here, downtown Toronto, and these would be the suburban areas. And you see on this map that different ethnic groups, a lot of them immigrants, they're not all immigrants, but they're ethnic groups, place of origin. Well, it is actually immigrants then. Immigrants based on their place of origin, where they're settling. And you see that it's very fragmented. The old model from decades ago was that a lot of immigrants would go downtown where housing was cheap at the time, and then services could be provided in these particular locations. Now what we're seeing is that the settlement patterns are very dispersed. Immigrants skip downtown. They don't go to Chinatown anymore. They don't go to Little Italy anymore. They go straight to the suburbs. And suburbs are much more dispersed. There's a lower residential density. And the places are much further apart from each other. And what the settlement sector is experiencing, which you see here, is that it's much harder to deliver services because spatial access is not as easy. So what you see in this is a study that a few colleagues of mine did, where the red dots are where immigrants locate, and then the blue circles are the locations of settlement services. And this is again a moving target, that these residential patterns are shifting all the time. But the settlement services, they have a particular location, and it's very difficult sometimes to catch up with the residential location of the newly arriving immigrants. And then when you're looking at rural areas or very dispersed areas, it's very difficult to deliver services at a particular location. And then the third challenge, non-permanent residents. I think this will become non-permanent, or not only non-permanent residents, but also residents without status, undocumented migrants. I think this will become an increasing problem in Canada as we see the numbers of temporary foreign workers and temporary migrants increase. There's also a larger pool of people that may decide to stay after their visa and work period expires. And then they will not have documentation, and they will be technically in Canada illegally. So I see this as an emerging kind of challenge. How can this population be accommodated, and how can pathways to permanency be provided? And an interesting phenomenon here is the emergence of sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities is something that is a movement that started in the US, but now is also very prominent in Canada and has gained in recent years, recent months actually, quite some momentum. In 2013, Toronto declared itself a sanctuary city and said, okay, the federal government has all these policies that render some people undocumented, but they're really part of our urban fabric. And our role as a city is not to exclude people without status or include people with status. What matters is who lives within our boundaries, and our mandate is whoever is living within Toronto, we have to provide services to their educational services, to their children, recreational services to them, and all the services that we provide as a city need to be provided to all residents, independent of federal status. So they declared themselves as a sanctuary city, and have implemented don't ask, don't tell policies. The idea is that if you approach frontline workers that work for the city, that this worker is not supposed to, implementation is another issue, is not supposed to ask for your status. If you want to get a library card, for example, and if that person happens to find out, then doesn't reveal that information, or doesn't pass it on to the federal immigration authorities. And that is supposed to provide access to health services, to municipal schools, also to police services. And implementation is still a challenge in the context of Toronto, that a lot of frontline workers don't know that this is Toronto's policies. But I think this is also one way in which cities are coping or trying to cope with the problem that is created by the federal government. In particular, I think by the increase of temporary migration to Canada. And I will end here, and I look forward to your questions, your comments, and to an interesting and enriching discussion.
Thank you, Professor Bauer, for your insightful presentation. And now we are going to open space for questions, comments. You may ask in Spanish or English as you want.
Hola. Hola. Sí, se oye. Mi nombre es Olga Chon, soy doctora en antropología y estudio todo lo referente a lo que se denomina en España contrataciones en origen, que son programas de trabajadores temporarios en la agricultura, fundamentalmente. Y a propósito de esta intervención, quisiera preguntar, en orden a los estudios académicos, cómo en Canadá se aborda el estudio desde el punto de vista de la terminología, si se ocupa el término inmigrante en esos trabajos, porque estoy desarrollando una investigación a propósito de esto, en el que pondríamos en juego, o en crisis, mejor dicho, el término inmigrante en los estudios, pues entendemos que aquello que se denomina migración circular no es sino una movilización de trabajadores, a cuyo nombre respondería lo que Saskia Sassen denomina non-immigrant workers. Esta sería como la primera pregunta. La segunda es, ¿no existe en verdad en la legislación española un método para residir permanentemente en España después de haber sido trabajador migrante temporal? ¿No existe el vínculo jurídico que haga que esa residencia pueda transformarse en permanente? Si existe eso en Canadá. Y me interesaría también saber, a propósito del régimen jurídico de la nacionalidad, para el caso de los hijos nacidos de inmigrantes en Canadá, si Canadá opta todavía, como en el pasado, por el ius soli o por el ius sanguinis.
Well, thank you very much for the questions. The first question was about terminology and migrant and immigrant and so forth. Circular migration. I think it's an interesting point, and I think there's also different kind of contexts in which different kind of terminology is applied. In the policy context, an immigrant is a permanent resident. So a person who applies through the system to come to Canada as a permanent resident, that's an immigrant. In the social sciences, there's a different kind of way of thinking often about immigrants and migrants. A lot of undocumented people, I would say, I could consider immigrants because they're permanently living in places like Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver or elsewhere. So they're here to be permanent, and they have been permanent. So effectively, they are immigrants, but that's not the official kind of language. Also, in an era where people are increasingly mobile and transnational, and families and networks are transnational, often perhaps the idea and the terminology of immigrant is also problematic and doesn't necessarily apply. You can be an official immigrant, but that doesn't mean that you're not continuously traveling back to your place of origin.
But I was thinking about people who works with the program temporary workers.
Right.
Quería decir, para el caso de los programas de trabajadores temporales, en la academia se estipula como que ellos son inmigrantes, los conceptúan de ese modo, o como Saskia Sassen denomina non-immigrants, que no son migrantes, ¿no? Para hacer que hacen. No tanto los irregulares. Que claramente tienen vocación de permanencia.
So the temporary workers, for example, in the temporary foreign workers program, I would call them migrants, not immigrants. Immigrant implies that there's an intention and the possibility to permanent settlement. So I would consider them migrants because they are able to work in Canada for 2 years and then they have to leave again. So even.
But for the agriculture, it's less than 2 years, I think.
Yeah, right.
Maybe months. This is mobilization, not an immigration. Or what do you think?
In terms of terminology itself, or in terms of
terminology?
Yeah. Well, I would still consider. I would apply the term migrant, even if it's. If you're talking about whether it's just a visitor or a guest. Well, guest is also problematic. There was guest worker program, and guest implies. I'm thinking of the guest workers program in Germany, for example, where the guests actually became permanent. So I think migrant would be, in that context, a better terminology, more accurate, because there is movement, mobility involved, and it could be actually a person in the Canadian context. The agricultural workers, for example, they're permanently temporary in that they, in the sense that they spend a season, a growing season in Canada, return to Mexico or Jamaica or their places of origin, and then come again the next year. And it continues like that year after year, and some of them come for decades or longer. So and that's when it becomes problematic. They're being kept in a permanent temporary status purposefully through policy, and never have the possibility to be permanent.
Hi, my name is Begoña and I work at research in the UC Center of Law and Religion. So I was very interested to know how about religion has an impact or plays a role in the immigration policies in Canada. But then you explain everything about the churches and the mosques and all the connections that are growing in this temple. So I would like to know if is there anything else about religions that is important or has an impact in this matter. And on the other hand, I would like to know if you have experienced any kind of issue based on religion's point of view in the public matters or the public sphere, for example, in schools or I don't know, maybe some liberal policies against conservative points of view in religion. I don't know, and have you experienced this and have you resolved this kind of issues based on religion's points of view? Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. I think let me first emphasize that the role that I see where religion comes into the integration process is not religion itself. It's a faith-based institution that provides a sense of community, and that is very important. And it doesn't matter what religion. It provides an anchor for newly arriving immigrants that is very important in some contexts. Some immigrants are not religious, some are, and in contexts where they are, that can make the difference for successful and unsuccessful immigration. I think that's quite critical to recognize that. Religion itself, of course, is very problematic. Not that religion itself is problematic, but the way it's often interpreted and it can be frighten some people. I just added a course to our curriculum at Ryerson on Islamophobia and the role of the Muslims in Western culture. I think that can shape public perception of immigration, that can shape immigration policy, not from the policymakers' viewpoints, but more through public reaction and backlash, and then public voting officials or voting representatives that favor one or the other or respond to that kind of. I think in Canada, it hasn't been a big problem as in other places, especially the US or parts of Europe. But it does exist, and it exists in some regions. It's more prominent than in others, and I think I would certainly be alert or aware of the fact that it could become problematic in Canada as well.
Buenos días, profesor Robert. Buenos días. Carolina Busco, profesora de Gabinete del Ministerio de Trabajo y Previsión Social. Tengo dos preguntas para usted. La primera relativa... ¿Más fuerte? La primera tiene que ver con el límite al porcentaje de contratación de trabajadores extranjeros de acuerdo a su ley. ¿Existe tal límite? Si no existe un límite legal al porcentaje, ¿fijan algún tipo de cuotas por sector económico? ¿Cómo funciona ya? Y la segunda pregunta tiene que ver con la política vigente en materia migratoria en Canadá. Tengo entendido que el año 2015 hubo un cierto giro a esta política histórica de bienvenida a los migrantes y de alguna manera se endureció el sistema de puntaje. De alguna forma se vio como discriminatorio, enfatizando la edad y las habilidades profesionales en cuanto a el puntaje que permitía acceder a una visa de trabajo en Canadá. ¿Qué nos puede decir sobre esto? Gracias.
Okay, first the limit. There is a limit. It's not a natural kind of limit, I think, but it's a policy where the Canadian government has identified roughly 1%. It hasn't reached that quite, but every year they set immigration limits, and we just had a debate or an announcement just recently that the outgoing minister said we're going to keep the limits at around what we have, 250, 260, and now the new minister says he wants to see an increase. So it can be adjusted. In the point system, it's relatively easy to do in setting the pass mark, the threshold. So under the point system currently, there are 1,200 points given, and then you can admit people after they reach a certain threshold or number of points. And depending on where you set that threshold, you can increase the number of immigrants that qualify, or if you lower the threshold, or if you increase the threshold, the number of the pass mark, then fewer people would qualify. So it's a very elegant kind of mechanism to regulate migration levels in that sense. And with refugees, it's the same. The government can admit a set number of refugees, and can say, okay, for Syrian refugees, we're going to close admissions at the moment. That's what they have done just recently. There has been a significant change in the point system. And I emphasized in my presentation that the whole system is continuously reworked and fine-tuned and changed and recalibrated. The point system is no exception. Before the change, the recent change a few years ago, there was a maximum of 100 points given out mostly for human capital, but also age, and age was the criteria of what's being in prime working age. This is where you receive the main points for. And then there was a change where the previous government thought that it would be important to have an offer from an employer. And it redesigned the entire point system. It moved from 100, maximum of 100 points to 1,200 points. And at that time, 600 of these 1,200 points were given to having an employment offer by a Canadian employer. Then a new government came in and changed the parameters of this program. It still maintained the 1,200 points, but it decreased the number of points that a person would receive for having an employment offer. So it's a moving target, and it's continuously changed. If you want to see exactly the criteria, you can easily go to online, and it's all posted. Posted, of course, for people wanting to immigrate, and you can look exactly what your education level is, how many years of education do you have deployment, do you have a diploma, and you can fill this. You can see relatively easily whether you would qualify to Canada or not. To come to Canada.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Alvaro Acevedo from the Chilean Industry Federation, and I would like to refer to your graph and your previous answer about the point system. What the main critiques of the systems are, the point systems are in Canada, and what the explanation for the decreasing gap above the Canadian average income is? Have you already skimmed the best immigrants? What is happening?
You're referring to this graph?
Yes.
Yeah.
The
Right.
one on the left.
Well, I think on the left one, I don't think we're too alarmed about this. I mean, the only problem is immediately upon arrival, where in the very left here, where the incomes are below the Canadian average. But very, very quickly, the people selected by the point system, their incomes are exceeding the Canadian average. So I don't see this as hugely problematic if you're arriving, and then in the first year your income is a little bit lower, or in the first 2 years, but then the trajectory is upward, and then chances are that you will make significantly more than the Canadian average. I don't think that is very problematic. I don't know exactly what the factors are. I think it's very difficult to get a handle on this. Where it becomes more problematic is with the people that are not selected by the point system. In the statistics, by the way, when you look at the government statistics, the principal applicants, this is the terminology applied for people selected by the point system, and the spouses and dependents, they're all considered economic class. So in the previous, if I go back, so in this graphic here, this includes not only the principal applicants, but also the spouses and dependents. So these figures, in a way, are also misleading. If you factored in only the principal applicants, those who are doing that so well in the labor market, you will find that there would be a relatively or a much smaller proportion of this area, of this blue area here.
And the critiques for the point system in Canada?
Well, it's still human capital driven, and also points for arranged employment, but the current government doesn't seem to like that category as much. And the emphasis is on human capital. And the idea is that if you have education, if you have the skills, then once you arrive, then you can apply these skills, or you find a way yourself to apply your skills and the education that you have. Whereas employment you can lose again, for example. Or if you're in a particular occupation, the labor market changes very quickly. A few decades ago, the point system emphasized a particular occupation, and there was a long list of every possible occupation out there, and each occupation had a number attached to it, up to 20 points. And every once in a while, every few months or so, I don't know exactly when, but the government recalibrated all these points based on labor market needs. But the problem, of course, was that the labor market is too dynamic. And when there's an occupation in demand, by the time it's measured that the demand exists, and then the government adjusted the point system, and then immigrants apply, and then come to Canada, by that time, the labor market has shifted and changed, and it's a different situation. So based on that experience, in the 90s, I think it was the late 90s if I'm not mistaken, there was more of an emphasis on human capital rather than occupation in particular. And the idea was that if you have the skills, if you have the work experience, if you have the education, then you will find a way to adjust to the labor market. And now, in the previous government, arranged employment was sort of one way of trying to attract immigrants. But of course, one of the problems was, and that was a big critique of that approach, that arranged employment gives too much of the authority, or hands too much of the authority over to employers, to the private sector. Rather than having the criteria within government control and public control.
Thank you, Professor Water. I'm Ignacio Morandé, advisor to Senator Garcia Huidobro. And thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. On the issue of integration, I just wanted to ask you if you could just very briefly tell us how you think Canada has succeeded through public policy in achieving that. And the reason I guess I wanted to ask is that Canadians view themselves as a very multicultural and open society, which I think is different to the situation in Chile. So I just wanted to know if you think that public policy has in any way helped shape that, and if you could tell us some policies in that respect.
Mm-hmm. Well, in terms of integration, we'll just move. I think this graphic shows the various components, and I think all of them are important. But what I think is unique and where Canada's strength is the settlement sector, that there is a settlement sector. When I talk about this issue with colleagues in Europe, for example, they look at me and ask, what is a settlement sector? Because it doesn't really exist. Some settlement services might be provided by the municipality or by branches of government that do not have a particular mission to help immigrants settle, but do it anyway and do it in the context of providing other services. Schools, for example, but here we have the settlement sector that is largely government funded, that plays a key role, and I think does it very successfully, and is also flexible, knows what the immigrants' needs are, treats often the family as a unit, and makes sure that there's daycare provided, so that, for example, an immigrant family or the caretaker in the family can take language classes. I mean, these are all services that need to be provided. And the settlement sector, I think, these largely civic institutions, NGOs, settlement service providers, I think that's key to it, and that's something that is Canada's strength, I would say. What was the second question again?
Just to what extent you think public policy has shaped this notion, or if it's just sort of the idiosyncrasy of Canadians to act that way?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, there is official policy in terms of multiculturalism policy. I think that was very important. How much this kind of idea of, well, and then there's always, Canada has always identified as a country of immigrants. But who the immigrants are, that has shifted over time. And there was a race-based, origin-based immigration system at one point. But that was then redesigned, and one of the ways of redesigning it, of having a non-discriminatory approach, was through the point system. Because points is supposedly only measuring credentials and human capital that is not based on origin. It's also not unproblematic completely, but it's certainly a huge improvement. And then, of course, the immigrant population has changed, and with the arrival of immigrants increasingly from China, from the Philippines, India, and so forth. So they're currently the top 3 countries of origin. The population became more diverse too, and in places like Toronto, it's impossible not to embrace diversity. And I think it's probably something that goes, various factors going hand in hand with each other. But it's certainly noticeable that this attitude exists, and I think it's another key component of why we are in Canada not having the situation that you see in the US at the moment or in parts of Europe.
Pregunta.
Hola, buenos días, soy Carolina Stefani de la Universidad Alberto Hurtado y tengo 2 preguntas. La primera es en relación al incremento en el precio de la visa de la ciudad para obtener la ciudadanía, perdón. Quisiera saber o que pudieras comentar un poco las razones de ese incremento, porque uno entiende que la política de puntaje tiene como objetivo seleccionar a quienes llegan, pero el incremento en el precio para obtener la residencia tiene otro objetivo, ¿no? Y la consecuencia, tú mismo la señalabas, es que deja a muchas personas en una situación de vulnerabilidad y de indocumentación. Entonces, ¿cuál fue la razón, más bien política, en ese incremento? ¿Y cuál es la idea o las políticas para frenar un poco la consecuencia negativa que tiene de generar una migración irregular? Eso es por una parte. Y la segunda pregunta es en relación precisamente a lo que señalaba sobre educación, que no aparece en este cuadro que presentas. Y ahí simplemente si pudieras hacer alguna reflexión de cuáles son los principales desafíos que tiene la educación intercultural en Canadá en el contexto actual.
Well, thank you very much. First, let me clarify, if a person with the citizenship issue, if a person doesn't assume citizenship, so that the trajectory is that you become an immigrant, so that's a permanent resident with status, and you can keep this indefinitely, it doesn't expire. And so then you can become a citizen, and the citizenship in most cases cannot be revoked. So then you become a full member of Canadian society. If you don't assume citizenship, you just continue to be a permanent resident. That doesn't really have an expiration date, but it can be revoked. For example, if you leave the country for more than 2 years, then it's possible that you can't come back as a permanent resident. So not assuming citizenship doesn't mean that people become undocumented. That's one reason. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't have many people decide not to take citizenship. For the reason about the increase, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. It was always the objective. If you have immigrants, then you want them to become citizens. It was always the idea that immigrants become Canadians. And this is also, I think, very important in the Canadian understanding the Canadian immigration settlement system. It could be that the Conservative government at the time just recalibrated what the impact, or underestimated what the impact will actually be. I'm not really sure about the reasons. It doesn't seem to make much sense from this viewpoint. In terms of education challenges, I'm sure that these challenges exist with, you talk about children?
Yes.
Yeah, in the school system. This is not necessarily my area of expertise. So what happens in the classroom, for example, I don't know. But I understand that integration is, in the integration process, the school system is crucial, especially for the second generation and the 1.5 generation, because the second generation are the parents of immigrants, and the 1.5 generation we consider people who arrive at an early age, but then become members of society that are indistinguishable. They don't have an accent, they don't have mannerisms that reflect Canada in every way. And for that 1.5 generation, I think the school system is crucial and has been also very, very successful. The individual schools are very open and ready to accommodate newcomers, and it's not in places like Toronto, of course that's the main immigrant gateway, but people come all the time, and people offer, or school systems are offering the kind of language training that is required, but then also move them very quickly into the classroom with everybody else. So the school system is crucial for that, and it has been successful. But in terms of the actual programming that is being delivered, I'm not sure.
Thank you very much. My name is Jorge Canelas. I would like to ask you, even if it could be considered out of context, but nevertheless, I think it's quite important for a country like us who wants to really shape a new immigration policy. Do you have any figures on how much does Canada invest in its newcomer settlement programs?
No, I don't have any figures. I don't know whether they're publicly available either. I think I haven't seen any figures in terms of the dollar figures. So sorry, I don't know exactly.
Solo una pregunta a propósito de lo que Carolina Estefani apuntaba sobre la educación, y cuando hizo la respuesta habló de la segunda generación. Antes incorporé una pregunta pero pasó por alto, no se contestó, y tenía relación justamente con los procesos de integración a través de la educación de aquellos llamados segunda generación. La pregunta era, ¿cuál es el régimen jurídico de la nacionalidad en atención a esta nueva segunda generación? Si todavía mantienen el usually o cambiaron a usually.
Well, thank you again. Yeah, just solely applies. So anyone born in Canada becomes a Canadian citizen, as far as I know. And just saying, when this applies in context, for example, if a Canadian, if the child is born to Canadian parents abroad. So it is, like most countries, a mixture, but the principle, guiding principle is just solely.
Una última pregunta. Damos por concluida esta conferencia. Agradecer la presencia del profesor Harald Bauder, del embajador, de las autoridades y especialmente disculpen, a toda la audiencia que pudo participar activamente en este importante tema. Así que muchas gracias y esperamos verlos de vuelta pronto.